Okay. I will speak in English. I will speak slowly. I'm sure that you all will understand what I'm saying. But anyway, if somebody wants to ask a question in Spanish, there will be no problem, and I think I will be also able to answer. Okay? So, my presentation is titled CMMI with Kanban, but in fact I refer to all the, let's say, classic management organizations and how they can take advantage of some techniques from Kanban in order to improve their way of working, their organization of work. Okay? So in 1999, in the year 2000, I was working at Nemetschek AG, a multinational company, and we had teams developing software in different countries, so it was really needed for the company to establish some ways of work which is kind of homogeneous way of work in the different branches of the company, and that's why we started a process improvement initiative. I think that we did a very good work with a very good consultant indeed, excellent one, but somehow, well, the work, well, we implemented, we defined lots of processes, we started implementing them, we started seeing the results. Anyway, the project was maybe too big, and some 18-20 months later it was cancelled. The explanation for this was that it didn't meet the expectations of the company. Since that moment, I somehow have in my mind that all the initiatives related to process improvement and reorganizing and making changes in the way of work in the organizations have to serve the business. Otherwise, they are just doing the exercise like a hobby. Okay? So in 2001, 2003, 4, 5, 6, I was working a lot with agile methods. I started with extreme programming. Afterwards, I learned Scrum. So I really like this spirit, the agile spirit and all the agile practices. But in 2006, 7, 8, these were, at least in Spain, these were the years of the boom of CMMI well, implementations. So I think I learned a lot from working with organizations that again were interested in introducing good practices of organizing their work. And CMMI, the CMMI model is really a good model, a good collection of these best practices. We have seen lots of good results, other results that are maybe not satisfiable, again from the business perspective. And since then, well, the last 4 years already, in fact, I'm working mainly with organizations that have some processes based on traditional management methodologies like CMMI. It could be also project management body of knowledge, rational, all these methodologies, and they are interested in improving their organization. Why? Because they suffer, let's say, these groups of problems. I have somehow summarized here. High management cost and excessive bureaucracy. Lots of reporting, lots of planning, replanning, lots of coordination effort. Estimating that afterwards doesn't work, does not serve. We are estimating, and again we have problems with meeting the plans. Risk identification. Yes, we try to do risk identification, but we constantly have the problem, so we cannot really mitigate, we cannot prevent the risks. So it's kind of game of identifying risks, but not in a very efficient way. Well, about reporting and lots of bureaucracy, I think I should not enter in more details here. I'm sure that you all understand and you know, you meet these kinds of problems. Then, inefficient work organization, lots of interruptions, everything is urgent. Prioritization criteria that are not very clearly defined, so we agree that this will be the order of work, of executing the work items, and all of a sudden there is something which is more urgent, so all these types of interruptions. With respect to processes, the fact that the processes are defined by some groups, maybe by the quality assurance department, already create the resistance within the people. They say, okay, these are not our processes. These are the processes that somebody somewhere defined, and they say that these should be good. But in fact, when we try to apply them in our real projects, they do not work as they were foreseen to work. So difficult adoption of the processes, lots of effort for training the people on these processes. In the end, they do not work as they were expected. Difficult change management. The resistance problem is well known. And working with services companies, when I speak about services companies, I mean also all the projects, for example, maintenance projects in software development companies, that they have some teams developing software, and afterwards we have to maintain these software applications, in addition to all the IT services that could be provided together with the software. So with respect to these types of activities or services, the typical problem that these teams meet are big workload, burden, difficult organization, difficult balancing between demands and these constantly changing demands and the capacity of the teams to meet and to respond to this demand. Okay, so if we try to map these problems over the process areas that include the practices that should resolve this type of problems, what can we see? Of course, some of the problems could be directly associated to the process management process areas. Okay? Everything related to the excessive bureaucracy, to the resistance of change, to the fact that the processes are the processes of the quality assurance department. They are not our processes. That the processes are rigid, they are not flexible, they do not allow us to be quick and to be adaptive to the changes that come from the customer and from the environment. So everything, all these types of problems, we can associate them to the process management processes. Project management, high management cost, lots of estimating effort, and afterwards problems with the plans. The problems with the plans lead to replanning and replanning again and again. So the project management work is difficult work, but it's mainly seen as a cost. So difficulties in meeting the commitment with respect given to the customers or also to the other departments. This is something very important. When we speak about planning and replanning and meeting dates, it's the same whether we speak about meeting dates with respect to our customers or meeting dates with respect to our colleagues from the other team, because their work depends on our work. So we also have to meet these dates. Okay? And of course, ineffective risk management. In lots of teams and projects, we can see a very good list of risks and somehow risk monitoring activities, but not in all the cases the risk management is really effective and giving good results. The engineering process areas related to the development of the software applications. These are people that really like their technical job, and they what they are complaining with most often is that they in fact do not have time for doing the job in the right manner, because they have so many interruptions and so many changes in priorities and requirements that in the end they start doing something, they have to leave it, not finished, of course. They continue with something different, then afterwards they go back to the previous task, so lots of interruptions. Okay? With respect to services and all maintenance projects also enter in this category, the main problem here, the main difficulties is unbalanced demand and capability. Really difficult to achieve this balance. Okay, everything is urgent, people are tired, and when we speak about working with customers and with providers, we are really in already a lot more complex situation, because we have to manage the work of our team, but in addition we have to align it to all the requests that come from customers, and also align it with the work on the side of our suppliers. Okay, so if we see what the practices in the CMMI model suggest or provide, and the problems that people really meet in the projects, we will see that, okay, meeting deadlines. Why do we have problems with meeting deadlines? Because there is lots of bureaucracy, because there are lots of changes to requirements, because there are lots of changing priorities, because we are not good in predicting our times or our effort. Why aren't you good at delivering good quality product or service? Well, maybe because the processes are very rigid, because the processes are not adaptive, because the processes restrict our activities, and that's why we cannot really develop a good process, because there is insufficient communication in the teams and also between the teams. Lots of teams suffer exactly this problem. Lots of unforeseen issues that appear all of a sudden, and they were not risks, they were not problems, and these are really things that simply were not foreseen in the planning. And when we go down, why we have all these problems, at the bottom what we find is that people really do not have visibility, or have limited visibility on who is doing what part and how, which are the dependencies between the works developed even within the same teams. I mean, people working in the same team together on developing a project, they have limited visibility on who is doing what and how these activities are related and how they really contribute to delivering this product to the customer or this service to the customer. And then lots of focus on meeting plans, on meeting days, and checking the progress of individual tasks. But as a whole, we do not have enough, we do not pay enough attention to establishing a fluent work, a smooth work without interruptions and without impediments in the flow. So if we really look at what is, which are the root causes for these problems, you will see that in fact they are not addressed in the CMMI model. The concept of visibility is not present in CMMI. The concept of flow is missing, absolutely missing. You can make a quick search in the model and you will see that they don't speak about this at all. Communication, yeah, there are practices related to communication. There are practices related to collaboration. But collaboration, I think that in lots of cases is simply misunderstood, because the fact that we have a group of people working on a project and everyone does something, this doesn't mean that they collaborate. Okay? And what it really means, collaboration, again, you can check in the CMMI model. Simply, it's not explained in the real sense of this word. Okay? So, it's not that the CMMI model is wrong or it fails, or simply it's incomplete. They are the practices that we need in the nowadays context of very dynamic projects are not included in this model. So we cannot complain that the model is wrong. Simply, they are missing practices that are not there. So the model is still helpful. However, it needs to be completed or accompanied by additional practices. Okay? So the problems, the root causes that we see as problems in lots of, again, I will say not only CMMI organizations, but because these last 3-4 years, I have had the opportunity to work with organizations that use other models like PMBOK, like SPICE, like ISO 21500. So we have the same problems. And addressing these root causes, in fact, is a matter of providing visibility in the current work in these organizations, in the teams, between teams and their customers, or between different departments. Focus on flow, absolutely missing in these traditional methods and methodologies. And two more aspects that are already not only related to practices, they are related even to values in the organizations. Transparency and collaboration. It's really very difficult to collaborate if we do not have transparency and which is the work we as a group, as a team are working on, which are the priorities, how do you make decisions. So all these things, for me, it's already the border between a practice and a value in the organizations. But these are 4 very important aspects that we really need to address in the implementations in the work with traditional management organizations. And in my experience, these last 4 years especially, what I have seen is that Kanban, some techniques, some practices from Kanban really can provide these missing, can facilitate the implementation of these missing aspects of defining more simple processes, adaptive processes, and of course achieving some efficiency, allowing the people to work more concentrated on their work without interruptions and without switching that much between different tasks. Okay, so I don't know, are there people who are interested to know just the practices of Kanban? Very beginning, maybe very good. Okay, yeah. Very briefly about the Kanban method, 6 practices. These are the 6 practices: visualize the work, manage flow, limit the work in process, make policies explicit, and 2 practices related to collaboration and making the feedback loops like daily meetings, retrospectives, so these good practices that come from the agile methods, and additional cadences related to the, how often we replenish the Kanban system, we decide what kind of work will be performed in the next replenishment cycle, etc. Okay, and 4 principles, very important principles. Start with what you do now. Something very, very important for organizations that are really used to their roles, to their structural organization. We start with the way we are working now without substituting processes, without breaking anything and saying that from tomorrow or from Monday we are going to introduce some great new techniques that we promise you that they will work. Then we initially respect existing roles, responsibilities, and job titles. Also, Peter was speaking this morning in the keynote. Every time when we try to change hierarchy and roles in the beginning, the only thing we are creating is resistance and chaos. That's why we do not, we respect the existing roles, we expect the existing job titles until the moment when the whole organization, the whole team is already conscious that there is a need to change something in these responsibilities. But we do not force anybody to change and to adopt new practices. Okay? And we collaborate and we work a lot in a team, looking always for continuous improvement. I want to say something here because this is my experience and my perception. The fact that the Kanban method has only 6 practices and 4 principles sometimes seems like, okay, this is so simple that it doesn't make sense to go to classes and study and apply. You know, it's somehow underestimated. But in fact, these practices are very powerful because they really, allow the teams is start working as a team and indeed start collaborating, start learning from their experience. This is another practice in the CMMI model which is so-so. You know that when we have assessments and we want to see whether the organization really learn from their experience, it's really very difficult to see, and we have the perceptions that maybe they prepare something just before the appraisal. Okay, so what we can gain from these practices is really converting the teams and the organizations in learning organizations from their proper experience, which is the most valuable experience. Okay, so one by one about all the types of problems which we meet, which I have seen in these types of organizations. First, the processes. This very big problem of bureaucratic processes and rigid processes and not adaptable, not agile, and how can we get rid of these complex processes, okay? So if you look at the 3 CMMI models, in general we have 2 types of processes, okay? They are distributed in several categories, but in total there are 2 types. These are the value-adding processes that the processes that allow the people really create value for their customers. And all the rest of the processes are here. Management processes, support processes, processes that should help those value-adding processes to really develop and deliver this value to the customers. Okay? So the concentration of all the process, of the big part of the process improvement effort should be concentrated here on delivery, on defining flexible and simple processes here on this side. And of course, maintain this part very thin. One way to achieve this along the time is having visualizing all these processes, like a map of these processes, in order to see how much is this part and whether this one is already too thick maybe and not sustainable. Okay? So just a tip, what in my case works, I have seen it as good practice, is start defining the processes from the right to left, from the delivery to the idea, and thinking if we want to deliver something, what we have to do in order on the previous step, and what we have to do on the previous step, and the previous and the previous. Why this way? Because if we start thinking from the beginning, we tend to think a lot in terms of our organizational structure. And we think, okay, we have to develop a design, then we have to pass this design maybe to the other department which is doing something, and this makes the whole path of creating value very long and adds bureaucracy in a natural way. While if we are thinking the other way around, starting from the product, back to the idea, something similar approach that Patrick showed you with the post-hypothesis, hypothesis, and pre-hypothesis, then we avoid this thinking in how we are internally organized. Okay? Then, of course, we have to focus a lot on these borders between logical borders between either departments or processes, because what we want to maintain is this part thin. Again, we want to reduce the bureaucracy and switching off between the processes, okay? So this approach works quite well. And the other thing is there are lots of organizations that really love to have very, very detailed processes with procedures, well, processes and procedures and instructions and I don't know what then and then and then and then. So if you really define processes, procedures, instructions, and tools, and helps, and tips, in the end, what you get is a rigid process, because you define it in such a rigid way that if you really want to follow it, you do not have any way to make it agile. You really have to follow these steps. So if you really want to achieve agile and flexible processes, leave the processes at the level of that the people can understand it. Process descriptions or process documentations do not substitute people. We work with people and they are thinking human beings, okay? So we do not have to give them all the instructions in order that they stop thinking. This would be exactly the thing that we do not want to achieve. So leave the processes really simple, allow the people to make their decisions. And then, depending on the situations in which they are, they will be able to make these decisions, of course. Okay? But if we really fix everything and we put it in one single path, then we cannot speak about any agility, of course. Okay? That's about the processes. Project management. Project management is a difficult task, so do not leave it only to the project managers. Project management should be part of, should be an activity which is conducted by the whole team. Because if we only give, or if you only expect that the project managers makes all the decisions only from his perspective or her perspectives, definitely we will lose perspectives of other team members that maybe are very valuable. So how can we allow, however, the whole team to participate? Visualizing the work. Visualizing the work about which we have to make some decisions. Knowing which are the tasks that are going well, knowing which are the blocked tasks, somehow with some impediments in them, and then making decisions. Also, well, all the colors can indicate you whether there is some urgency or not on these tasks, whether they are for some more important clients or clients that can wait a little bit. So visualize all these informations for the whole team and let them meet in front of the Kanban board and think how they have to approach and what kind of decisions they have to take for their project. Okay, the project is not the project of the project manager, it's the project of the team. This helps a lot also addressing risks, and this helps a lot also addressing all these unforeseen things that happen daily in all the teams. Okay? Then we all complain, or all the teams typically complain that they have problems with meeting plans and meeting deadlines. But if you ask them how do they manage the time, how do they really, what do they do to ensure that they meet the deadlines, they will typically answer you that we are following the plan and we are checking periodically, maybe bi-weekly, maybe once a month, we are checking whether we complete the tasks on time. This is not enough. Okay? However, very few teams measure the lead time. This is the time in which the task between these two moments, when the tasks enters the Kanban system, the team starts working on it, and the time when this task is already finished, really finished, completing all the criteria. So if you open this time of finishing a task, you will typically see that part of this time is really value-adding time, and the other part, unfortunately, this is the larger part of this time, is the time when the tasks is not in a situation, not in a state of value-adding. It's just waiting for approval. It's maybe waiting for some information, or well, waiting for any reason. In 2012, in Lean Kanban France, there were very worrying statistics mentioned about the ratio between value-adding and waiting time. In fact, this is what we call efficiency, this ratio between value-adding and the total lead time. And in IT companies, data about efficiency that were reported were between 5 and 10% of efficiency. And 15 is already considered very good. 40, excellent. So can you imagine that if we have a work of 100 hours, only 40 hours are real work and the rest of the time is just waiting. So this is really a worrying statistic. Okay? So project managers and the teams all together, they can really have a look in their time. And I constantly do this with the companies which I work, and this really makes the people think. Why is a task for such a long time in a situation, in a state that nobody is working on it? It's just waiting for somebody to make a decision, to get information, to get an approval. So if we really want to meet the deadlines, our objective should be to reduce this lead time. If you want to reduce times and time for achieving, completing the work, what do we typically think of? If you speak with the organizations, of this type of organization, most of them will tell you that we are looking for practices to make people more productive, more effective. In fact, we are looking for practices to make people finish this green part faster. Why? Why this part? If this one is the bigger one, and this one, the waiting part, is a lot easier to reduce. Just reducing time for making decisions, reducing time for achieving approval from people, reducing time when the task is simply abandoned because there was something more urgent, because someone called me and told me that I have to do this and that and that. Okay? So there is a lot easier way to achieve shorter delivery times, opening this box and analyzing why our work is not flowing. Okay? So this is about project management. Then metrics. Typically, in lots of organizations, you will see a long list of metrics, but we typically, again, miss metrics that are really pragmatic metrics and that are related exactly to meeting the deadlines with our clients, which is our main problem, especially in service organizations. Okay, so what we can take from Kanban are measuring the cycle time or the lead time for delivering our work, and when we are happy already with the results we see with respect to the lead time, we can open and see how much time we have really dedicated to performing this work. And then when we see situations like this one, we can analyze these cases exactly and see what happened here. Usually there are some special causes for these cases, and see what we can do in order to avoid similar causes and come back to a better performance. Okay, and a diagram which is usually very shocking, and people say, okay, this is very complex and we do not understand this. This is the cumulative flow diagram. In the end, it's a diagram which is very easy to understand and very helpful. Why? Again, speaking about deadlines. What we see in this diagram is, in fact, how much work items, how many tasks we have in each one of the columns from the Kanban system, or in different state. Okay, so the green band here, in fact, for us here in this case exactly, is the work items which we have started and not finished yet. Okay, so here we have finished items and already archived items, and the brown part here is something to be started, and the blue part is the backlog, all the ideas that we have to deliver. So why is this diagram so useful? Because it links, it demonstrates us in very easily what is the link between having lots of work in process and the delivery time, okay, the lead time. So behind this we have the Little's law that tells us that the larger the WIP, the larger the number of items in process, open tasks, the longer the lead time, the delivery time will be. Okay? So you can see immediately the difference. So if we reduce the work in progress, then we automatically reduce this delivery time. So that was something that we saw in Peter's keynote this morning. Patrick's also mentioned. So this is this magic work in process that sometimes is so difficult to explain to people, that if you are really in a hurry, reduce the work in process. Do not start many times, but somehow I don't know why it's counterintuitive, maybe. This is because people say, but if we are in a hurry and we have lots of work, then we have to start with all the tasks in parallel. No, 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 stop. Start with less time, with less tasks if you really want to deliver something in short times. So this is this diagram. So for project managers and teams, it's not necessary to go every day to your Gantt chart and your Microsoft project. Just have a look at your diagram and look whether these bands go more or less in parallel, or they start going one line ahead of the other one. And if you see this situation, obviously you are in a risk of delay for the project. Okay, so quite easy. Engineering processes. Okay. Well, I'm not going to ask, I'm sure that you already understand this is a kind of a Kanban system. We have the limits, we visualize the workflow, we visualize all the work items that are here. These are the magic WIP limits that allow only a certain number, up to this number, of tickets to appear in each one of the columns of the Kanban system, so the status of the task. So when development teams start using the Kanban systems, what they really appreciate and like is first that they have a visibility on this part here, which is the work they have to concentrate on. And they have to stop thinking about what will come next and what we have to do in order to address that issue, etc. So concentrate on this work. It's limited work already, and when you finish this work, then you can start new works. Okay, so this is really important for them, and people appreciate it because technical people really enjoy doing their technical work. And in fact, what they complain is from lots of interruptions, but if we remove these interruptions and if we allow them to focus on the work that they enjoy and they like, so they're really happy. Okay? The other thing that they really enjoy, and this helps them start collaborating, is because they know who does what, and if there is a problem in a task, they know who is the guy that is blocked for some reason because he's resolving a problem. Because there are problems that can be resolved in 5 minutes, and there are problems that cannot be resolved even in 5 days. So it's really important that this is somehow visualized to the people, to the whole team, because this will make them help each other. And this is, in fact, the concept of collaboration. Otherwise, if everyone has his assigned task and he works silently in his place without speaking with his colleagues, it's difficult to collaborate. And it's difficult to make work flow, because if someone is blocked for for resolving a difficult problem, and the other colleagues do not even know, how can we unblock and make this work go out from the Kanban system and be finished? Okay? So very helpful for technical teams. For service teams, maintenance teams, lots of types of work that they have to address and resolve in one single day, day after day. Here you do not see that many states of work, but the problem usually with the services team is that they have to respond really to very variable demand and changing in times of frequency and types of work. So if we really work with a Kanban system, what we get is that the number of items that are foreseen to be performed for a day or for between replenishing here the system and the next cycle, and here, so the number of here and here has to be equal, the sum of the items. So this is really what helps us balance demand and capacity, which is really the big pain for services teams. Okay? And again, all the colors, all the information which we can see on the different tickets, this is that makes these teams make decisions easier, because they know, okay, maybe this has higher priority than the other color, or maybe this color from yellow is already red because there is a deadline that is approaching and we really have to be very quick there. So again, if all this information is visible to the whole team, it's a lot easier for them to make decisions. Always following the principle, first finishing a work before before starting a new job. Okay? And with customers, working with customers, these are for the cases of organizations that are working with lots of suppliers. We are in a particular, somehow more complicated situation. Why? Because as a contractor, we know what we have to do. But on one side, we have all the customers for whom we have to deliver this work. Customers or users, end users. Okay? And on the other side, maybe we as an organization, we are not going to develop internally the whole work only in the company. So maybe we will rely for some parts of the work, we are going to rely on suppliers. So we are in this situation when we are under pressure to meet all these expectations of our customers, but on the other side, we are affected by all the deviations, problems that might occur on the side of our suppliers. So in the end, it's a kind of making this puzzle between the expectations of the customers and what we get and when we get it and whether we get all the products from our suppliers with good quality. It's not an easy job. Okay? So which practices or techniques from Kanban can help us? This is something which I have less experience because it's really difficult to go beyond the borders and try to transmit these practices to your clients. But I start seeing this with a company with which I work with. So they are in the situation of being here. They started using and transmitting their experience and working with Kanban systems also to their customers. This is something Jorge Muria this morning explained similar experience. When we start helping our customers to work in the same way, already the border between these teams is a lot easier, and the understanding between the customer and the development team and afterwards the suppliers team it's a lot easier. So start working and transmitting the knowledge of using some basic Kanban skills and techniques. Okay, so it's not so difficult, but it's really a matter of understanding from the other side. Okay. So what I have seen as most useful for CMMI or for traditional management organization, when they start using some practices from Kanban, what they get first is lighter, really more agile processes, not defined until the very last detail, but that allow their teams to make decisions. Then maintaining this, you saw the lower level of processes, which is management and support, maintaining these activities as a thin level of activities, and this, in fact, makes the processes sustainable. Something else, I think I forgot to mention it. When we define the processes in this way, I would always suggest to define the processes with the teams. Okay, so the processes are not the processes of the quality assurance department. If we define them with the teams, first, the teams, the people know that these are their processes. They participate in defining them. They contribute with ideas, and afterwards they contribute naturally to improving these processes, because they know that when they see that they did not define something in the best way, of course they will make suggestions how to improve them. But if the processes are defined by someone else in another building maybe, and we know that, well, asking for an improvement for a particular suggestion to a process is maybe a long process, then maybe it has to be approved by the process improvement committee, etc. So in the end, people do not make suggestions. But if they have to improve their own processes, they participate actively. Okay, and this is also that makes the process sustainable. Okay. Also, if people are better involved in defining and sustaining and improving their processes, then the good job or the good news for the quality assurance guy is that they have to leave their checklist in the end. Okay, they do not need anymore the checklist, because these checklists are already criteria, simply criteria for passing a work from this state to the next one. And the people themselves check whether they really perform this work or not, because if they don't do this, afterwards they suffer the consequences. Okay? And for the quality assurance people, what they can do now, and it is a lot more valuable, is that they have to look at the whole chain of value adding. and look how the processes fit between different departments or between different organizations, which is because they are the people that have this visibility about the complete value-adding chain. Okay? But leave the details to the people that really can contribute with a lot better ideas. Okay? People in these situations, people really start contributing and are involved in a natural way. They start collaborating. I remember in one company when we started speaking about this, the conclusion in the end was a guy said, it means that now we are going to be friends. So it's, until now, everyone was working on what he was assigned without speaking with the other, and now they saw, okay, so maybe we can be friends, no, and start working together. Okay. Higher efficiency. Higher efficiency after opening first this red box and seeing how much time is the work stopped for some reason, know which are these reasons and try to address them. And when everything is fine with the red box, open, of course, the green one and see how it can be improved. And afterwards, what, in my opinion, is very, very positive for the teams and for the organizations is that they start learning from their proper experience. And this is really very important. And this is something which I miss in the CMMI module, indeed, because we speak about higher maturity, but maturity measured in a different way. What I really want to see is the maturity of the teams, people that learn from their proper experience and contribute with ideas how this could be improved at each step. Okay, so this happens. Slowly, 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 but it happens. Okay, and how do we start? Applying the same principles from the very beginning, from defining the goal for the process improvement. Process improvement does not start with, well, it starts sometimes. And lots of times it starts with an appraisal and it starts with a process improvement plan. But behind this is what I told you that is in my mind since '99. A process improvement starts with a particular goal. There should be another reason different than we just want to define processes or we want to achieve a certain certification. There should be a reason behind this, which is a reason important for the whole organization, for the people in the organization. If this reason is not important for the people, they will not follow it. It's clear, in my opinion. So we start with first defining what do we want to achieve in some time, in some maybe 2 years, 3 years. We don't know the path. We will follow maybe discovery Kanban to come to this, but having in mind this vision and having in mind it consistently and constantly, we have to know which are the first things that we have to address, which are the most urgent issues that we want to resolve, and how we see the resolution or the organization after resolving these urgent issues. Okay, so here you will see some concepts that also come from lean startups and okay. And then we define the steps only for addressing these two issues. When we achieve something, then we will decide what to do on the next step. So work on small steps, 6 months, 9 months, something, a time which is reasonable. We do not speak about 5 years ahead, okay? Then when we define what we have to do, again, we can visualize these activities for all the people that are directly involved in the implementation of these activities, these actions, and also for all the people that in this case, right now in that moment, are not directly involved, but they will be involved in a future moment. So it's really very good that they are aware of what we are doing and they can at least share their opinion, or maybe in some moment when they say, okay, we have an idea for something, let's speak with these people. Right now they are working on the requirement specification templates, or maybe they are starting working on verification, validations, or anything, okay? When people really have visibility on this, they can contribute. Otherwise, it's, you know, it's the process improvement project which is developed by 2 or 3 guys somewhere, and we don't know what is happening, but sometimes they will tell us when they are ready with the processes, and afterwards, in the end, we don't follow them, okay? And how do we create the solutions? How do we define this process? Always together, always in a team, working, thinking on the complete. Here what you see is defining the processes, but already having defined the complete workflow, knowing which are the phases, the steps through which a work item evolves. Okay, so working this together, and when applying it, of course, applying the same principles of visibility, transparency, and collaboration. So, this is the last slide. Some tips for organizations. I don't know how many of you are working on this in these types of organizations, but if you are a team member or if you are working with teams that really are looking for some agile approaches for conducting, developing their work, and they are not in a typical agile organization context, so this could be helpful. Visualize the work for the whole team and focus on this. Stop starting, start finishing. First, finish a task before starting a new one among all the team members, all together. If you are a project manager, again, visualize the work for you and for the team in order that the whole team can help in managing the projects, finding the risks, finding or suggesting things that might happen, unforeseen things. Manage the flow with the team, knowing where the impediments are, and speaking with the team about how all these obstacles could be resolved in an effective way. Measure efficiency. Know how much your work is stopped and for what reason, and try to resolve these reasons. Okay? For the quality assurance staff, take advantage of the fact that these people have visibility on lots of processes and lots of departments, teams, and the borders between these departments and teams. So really make them help on resolving all the issues that are on the borders. Leave the details for the processes for the people that really implement these processes, because they can add better ideas. Okay? And for the managers, start always with a why. Always know what kind of problems we have to resolve and where we want to go, at least as a direction. Gradually we will find the path to this objective, but start with a more reasonable why for the process, and align the teams. Really align the teams. This is the difficult part for the managers, because one team meets one type of problems, the other team means other types of problems, and as managers, people have to make the workflow from one team to the other, to the next, to the next. Okay? So these were something like a summary of what I learned with working with this type of organizations. Okay, questions?